Morning, everybody. Welcome to the gathering, and it's good to be here. You know, as I read the Gospels and read more of the Word, I kind of get the feeling that what was of importance to Jesus was not that people behave, was not that people keep a certain code of conduct, was not that people sign up to memberships of belief, but simply that people wake up. And Jesus often talked about the reality that many of us go through life sleepwalking. We're just not aware of what is already ours. We're just not aware of the kingdom that is all around about us. We talk a lot about the kingdom to come, and I believe in that. But many of us are just not awake to the reality that the kingdom is here and now. And so we go through life hoping for the best. And we've just started a series where I only started last week and it ends this week, so it's a pretty short one. I think we need to spend more time on it because I think there's a lot of stuff to go through in this. But I hope what you are getting from this series is that there is a higher virtue than hope. And if you're Adventist, you know all about hope. We talk about it all the time, the great blessed hope. And it's a wonderful thing. But there's a higher virtue than hope. It's a virtue that Jesus taught and lived, and that's the virtue of knowing. Virtue of knowing. Not just hoping and wondering and not being sure, but knowing. And not knowing in a sense of facts and not knowing in a sense of information, but knowing in a sense that everything is actually going to be okay between you and God. Knowing. I've only been arrested once. Like proper. Is Sal here? What is it? I've only been arrested once. I was 16 and it was for something really minor. Like it was just a silly little thing. I can't even remember what it was or else I'd share it with you. But it was just some silly little thing, and there I was, slammed up against the brick wall, hands behind my back, the policeman slapping handcuffs on me in the car, and driven into Christchurch police station where I got fingerprinted and thrown into a holding cell. That's only ever happened once in my life. So, you know, people say if you make a mistake once, you're dumb. If you do it twice, you're really stupid. So I'm just dumb, not stupid. It's never happened again. But I got thrown into the cell, and I remember standing in that police cell and thinking, my life is over, my future is gone. I remember thinking and wondering if the death penalty was still in play in New Zealand. I wasn't sure. And I spent the whole night there. What I didn't realize while I was in my despair is that Mum and Dad and the police knew about this. I think it was a little arrangement between parents and police to teach the boy a lesson. But I didn't know that at the time. So I'm sitting in prison feeling the despair of life disappearing before my eyes. I'm in prison feeling the anxiety of having no future and having a criminal record and all this sort of stuff. Not realizing that Mum and Dad and the police knew about this the whole time and it was actually going to be okay. And so the next day when I went into court and I stood before the judge and Dad came bowling into court and they did their little role play thing and Dad set me free and I thought it was all him and we went home and I never forgot it and I was a good boy ever since that day. Well, a good enough boy not to go to prison. And often the journey with Jesus is like this. We find ourselves in dark places. We find ourselves in despair. We find ourselves parched, wilting, and just desperate to see the way forward. I don't know if there's anybody sitting here today that finds themselves in that place, and Karen talked about that last week. Not knowing, not realizing that Jesus has actually led us to that place. Now, I don't know what you're thinking, but that sounds weird to me when I first thought about this, that Jesus might actually lead us to the place of suffering. And we despair and we think it's all over. But there's more coming. There's more coming. So last week, Karen beautifully started this transformative journey with us by introducing us to Alexander Shire's Heart and Mind 4-pathway journey of transformation. And here's some key thoughts about the 4-pathway journey that I'd like you to be observant of, just so that hopefully it makes a little bit of sense. So Alexander Shire wrote a book and pulled together all his skills in anthropology, science, theology. And he had an epiphany one night in New Mexico and saw this 4-pathway journey of transformation that is not new. It's not a new idea. It's an ancient idea. And it doesn't only just apply to his thinking, but when you look at other maturation processes, and I'm going to go through this morning, other maturation processes, especially from indigenous societies, where you have to figure out how to go from a boy to a man. There are seasons, 4 seasons. The first season is like, have we got this the right way around? Yeah, we have. The first season is like standing in front of a big mountain of disruption. You know you're no longer a boy, and you know the trial is coming, and you stand at the foot of this mountain, and you are deciding whether you're going to climb that mountain. And Alexander Shire relates this to the seasons, and he relates this to autumn. It's like autumn. There is change happening. There's physical change, there's political change maybe, there's social change, and it feels like you're standing at the foot of a mountain about to climb it, this mountain of disruption. And then the next thing that happens is that you climb the mountain of disruption, and after your huge effort, you might think that you should end up in paradise. But what actually happens is you end up in a very, very, very stormy place. When you've had a paradigm shift, or when everything that mattered yesterday doesn't matter today, or that when all the beliefs that you've built your life on crumble in the dust and you're sitting in the ashes of yesterday's temples. It's very, very stormy. Another way to look at it is like being in a desert and seeing sand dunes forever and having an anxiety that's like a dry anxiety, that you're parched and you're wilted and you're going through a really, really tough time and you can't see the end. And I don't know if there's anybody sitting in this audience that may be in this season right now, but the thing about seasons is that they don't end. I mean, they do end. That's the thing about them. They do end. That's the good thing, Kira. I knew you'd pick that up straight away. That's the new thing. That's the good thing about seasons. They do come to an end. And the next thing we know, after being through the storm of life and feeling the pain and the suffering, we find ourselves walking into what is like a beautiful garden of spring, where we have big aha moments, where we have big epiphanies. It's like finding out something that has always been there, but you've only just discovered it. I don't know if anybody is in that season where you're just basking in new knowledge or you're just basking in new realizations. It's like spring. And then after spring season, the theory is that we go into summer. And summer is full of joy. Summer is full of anticipation, because it's in summer that you pick up on the gift that you discovered in spring. And summer is all about figuring out how to bring that gift to fruition so that it actually helps people. So if you're in spring and you're having great realizations, that's great for you, but it's not really helping anybody. Just saying. We have to move on through the seasons. A lot of people like to stay in spring because it feels nice. But what the process says is that we have to move from spring into summer. And so, just a slide. It says here that there are 4 paths that make up the transformative journey. They're known paths and have been written down for us to follow. The 4 Gospels reveal the paths. So, here's how it works. And by the way, this is really historical. If you study church history from our church fathers, this is how they put together their preaching schedule. They would start with autumn, and they would start with the book of Matthew. Matthew is like climbing the big mountain of Matthew. Why? Because Matthew was written to people, to Jewish people, whose whole idea of spirituality had just been destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. So if you're a Jewish person and your whole of life reverberated around the temple, when that got destroyed, you had no idea what to do. And so you're standing at the bottom of this mountain as a Jewish person wondering, and Matthew writes to them. Matthew writes to them. And you can see it in the genealogy. He starts with a genealogy because he's going somewhere with a genealogy. And he's saying everything that you guys thought was right practice, I'm going to show you something different. And we have things like the Beatitudes where he says, blessed are the poor. What? What? We thought the poor were cursed. That's why they're poor. And now Jesus is saying, blessed are the poor? Well, that's, never heard that before. That's different. Blessed are the humble. What? Blessed are the meek. Blessed are all these people. That's new. That's all new. And what? Don't you know that your body is the temple? No, but our temple got destroyed by the Romans. Yeah, but it doesn't matter because now your body is the temple of God. Oh, wow. Amazing. And then we head into the winter of Mark, the stormy sea of Mark. And we have all these storm stories and these dark places. And Mark, the book of Mark, starts with John the Baptist bellowing out a stormy message. Basically goes like this: you are all sinners, say sorry, and then you might be saved. Stormy message. And people come actually to a very barren place to hear it, to a desert to hear Mark's message. And then we go to John. This is the sequence that the Gospels were read in the early church. Didn't go to Luke, they went to John. And in John, after the storm, it's like walking into a beautiful garden. And John starts off with beautiful stuff. In the beginning was God, was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Mind-blowing. You know, many commentators call John the eagle. You know why? I think it's because the eagle is the only animal that can look at the sun without blinking. Did you know that? It can look straight at the sun without blinking. And John's gospel is like this, where you have revelations about God. And then summer, we go to Luke. We go to Luke in summer. And Luke starts like this. There was an old man. His name was Zechariah. And there was an old lady, and her name was Elizabeth. And they've spent years in a storm because they had no baby, no child. They were barren. It reminds me of Tia and Licky up at hospital there with baby Fatu, who just passed last night. And we went and visited them, and it's like, this is where they are, in this suffering place. But then all of a sudden, an angel comes to Zechariah and he says, Zechariah, I know you're an old man, but I'm going to give you a revelation. You're going to have a baby. Your wife's going to have a baby. How many people here consider themselves old? I don't know what old means, but yeah, Arona is old, yeah. But can you imagine that type of revelation in your old age, where you've been spending your whole life in a winter of barrenness, and all of a sudden an angel comes and says, hey, you're going to have a child, you're going to have a baby, you know. And then they spend their summer training this child in the way and for his life duty. Seasons. And so I guess the series is about our transformative journey follows the same pathway. And the big question is, where are you in this journey? Are you standing at the foot of a mountain? Are you going through a storm? Are you sitting in a garden of revelation? Or are you engaged in mature service, finally understanding what you're here for? I want to talk a little bit about the second path, this path here, is definitely the hardest. It's definitely the toughest path. It's a hard one to get through. There's a lot of anxiety in that path, where nothing from the past works for you. None of the answers that used to give you solace come anymore. It's like winter. It really is like winter. But then spring comes, and I want you to think of spring. Why spring would follow winter. And to help you think of spring and to feel spring, all right? I want you to feel it. And by the way, today is the first day of spring. Isn't that cool? Today is the first day of spring, so I want you to feel, close your eyes and feel spring. And I'm wondering if we can play that piece of music by Vivaldi from Four Seasons, just a little snippet of spring, and just see if you can imagine, and if the music helps you to feel spring. Can we do that? Feel spring in that piece of music? Could you feel it? New life, new ideas, epiphanies, aha moments. John 1 says this, in the beginning the Word already existed. What? The Word was with God, and the Word was God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave life, which is what spring is all about, to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. In one electric, life-changing instant, it seems as though everything in us shifts and a blinding new reality enters. Have you ever experienced this? Until this point, so much has been struggle. Nevertheless, we remain faithful through all the difficulties and missteps. Now what arrives and opens in us feels like the everlasting embrace of an eternal guardian or an intimate lover. It is as though we have walked through a gate into the most beautiful springtime garden imaginable. Immeasurable beauty and bounty surround us. We are filled with an immediate and unexpected experience of union, full, unreflected, visionary, totally indescribable. The sensations of this moment will be different for each of us. Some of us will be aware of a new energy. We may tingle or we may tremble. Some will feel a deep stillness, a great calm, or an exuberance may arise. Yet almost universally, we will perceive everything as a gift. This is the experience of the blossoming Christian community in the teeming complexity of the Aegean port of Ephesus at the end of the first century, to whom John wrote. John's gospel provided answers on how to take former enemies and create a diverse community of oneness. Its answers on ecstasy, diversity, and union remain wisdom for us today. The third season is where we discover the gift given to us as a result of coming through hardship. Can I posit that if any of you are sitting here waiting for your gift to be revealed, have you embraced a season of suffering? Do you know what it means to suffer? The gift comes to us as a result of coming through, not as a result of dodging, not as a result of trying to sidestep, not as a result of trying to get away from suffering, but as a result of coming through suffering. The gift is revealed in our season of spring. This season has feelings of joy and union and feelings that all is well. You breathe easy in this season. You rest in John's amazing garden. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave the gift. John is all about understanding and realizing that the gift has been given. I feel I had the experience when God brought me home from LA without a passport. I don't know if many of you have heard that story, but I definitely felt coming home from LA without a passport and landing in New Zealand and actually getting home, I felt those feelings of deep joy and ecstasy and a little bit tinny, but it was amazing. And the things that God spoke to me through that experience were huge. The third season of spring is all about realizations, deep epiphanies and aha moments, but it is not till the next season that we see any fruit from the gift that we've just discovered in this season. And now I want to talk to you about summer. And I want you to think summer. And once again, we're going to go to Vivaldi just for a minute and listen to the sounds of summer and see if you can picture it and feel it and smell summer. Wow, I don't know what you felt as you listened to that piece of music. For me, I felt moments of exuberance and moments of challenge, and but also moments of uncertainty. I don't know if you heard uncertainty in that piece of music, but this is exactly what the season of summer is like. When you've been resting in the garden of this beautiful garden of John's realizations and revelations, you have to go into the next season and step out onto the road. And when you step out onto the road, the very first thing you're going to encounter is issues, hassles. The first thing you're going to encounter when you step out on your road of mature service is problems. And I think of our Marae project here, and I remember having, we sat as a group, as a team, and we had these wonderful revelations about this is what God is calling us to, and we talked Isaiah 58, and it was beautiful. But if we just stayed in that committee and just talked all day, we wouldn't have a service operating today. So we had to actually leave the beautiful garden of the committee room and step out into our community and start this thing on a Thursday night. And as soon as we started it, we had opposition. And this is what this season is like. Yeah, it's full of joy, but sometimes it feels like this season of anxiety because there's opposition. When you strike out in the direction that God has gifted you to strike out on, the first thing you're going to face is opposition. And one of the problems and one of the reasons why we don't like to strike out in this final season is because we don't want to face the opposition. It's a bit scary. So it's a little similar to this, except the anxiety is a different type of anxiety. This anxiety is a dry anxiety where you can't see the light, where you can't see your way, whereas this anxiety is an anxiety built on knowing the gift and built on wanting to see that gift come to fruition, and the excitement of that drives you into mature service. It's a different type of anxiety. And we see it in the book of Luke, and we particularly see it in the book of Acts, where people were imprisoned but singing their hearts out for joy. Where people were being imprisoned but not praying for the imprisonment to stop or the suffering to stop, because they'd already been through the suffering, they know about it. They're simply praying for strong angels now, not for the suffering to go, not for the hassles to go, but they're just simply praying for strong angels maybe. Maybe they're praying for more courage. And this is the difference of the last season. If you're in this season, expect to feel impatience around bringing the gift into fruition. I know about being impatient, about seeing projects get off the ground. And I've got somebody here in the audience right now, Lynn. Lynn, can you just, I think everyone knows you, but do you want to stand up and just wave? Because I just want to talk about you for a minute. Is that all right? No? Okay, don't stay there. Lynn is that type of person who I believe, Lynn, I believe this part of your life, you're on this pathway. Lynn has been bugging me, and she knows how to bug people. And she's been bugging me, and she comes up to me and she says, Karl, I'm free, I'm available. That doesn't sound good. She says, to work in the church, I'm free, I'm available, and I want you to give me a job. And at the time when Lynn was saying this, I had no job. I didn't have a clue what we were going to do. And I'm like, yep, absolutely. The next Sabbath, Lynn would make a beeline for me, and she'd go, Karl, have you got me a job? And I'm like, no, it's only been a week. And she'd go, well, I'm going to ask you next week. And then to get to the point where I'm trying to not lock eyes with Lynn, but have you ever tried to not lock eyes with Lynn? It's impossible. Because you go like this, and she's like this. And you go like this, and she's like this. And she's like, Karl, have you got me a job? Well, we finally got Lynn a job. Hey, and Lynn runs our marae. Yeah. Let's give her a clap. And so in this part of her life, I believe Lynn is on this pathway. But what Lynn needs to realize is that although she's full of joy because she is now able to use her gift, you're going to get opposition, Lynn. You're going to get opposition. But I hope, because you've walked this transformative journey, that you know about how to handle it, and you know about how to be gracious in it, because you've walked it. So I hope this series has been helpful to you. Like I said, I don't think we've spent enough time on it because we're really just skimming. But I hope it's been helpful. I hope you know that you are found. The series has been called Found. No matter what season you're in, you're found because God is there. As a matter of fact, God has led you there. He's there because he's led you there. You're never lost. So, sometimes we in this season especially, and we can't see our way, and we are dry, and we are lost, and we feel forsaken. But God led you there. He led you there. There's something about suffering that is in the very nature of God. And there's something that we all need to know about suffering in order to progress to the next seasons. So you're never alone, even in this season. God is there because he led you there through his son, Jesus Christ. And of course, you won't feel alone in this season because you're just sparking off. Something is speaking to you. The gift in you is coming alive, the realization. You definitely feel Jesus here. And Jesus is with you as you journey with your gift and make it beneficial for those around you. And you know that God is with you in that journey. So how about us? How does this apply to us as a community? And I'd like to suggest that the greatest value in a community is not communication, by the way. We get hung up on making sure we've got all the communication right. I'd like to posit that there's more important things than constantly promoting ideas. There's more important things than never-ending psychobabble around competing theologies. There's more important things than the ever-present urge to solve problems. The greatest value for our gathering is not communication, it's communion. Communion. Communion is where we get to sit in silence with each other, knowing where we are on our journey. The common table is not uniformity. We have brought our diversity and the conflict that comes from it to bind us together in the common practice of finding the harmony together, which is what shalom is all about. Bringing together discordant people and allowing discordant people to rub up against each other, thereby creating space for beautiful harmony. This is why we love inviting you to the open space right here, where we are not impeded by church pews, we're not separated by sections. It's here in this open space that we can stand together in solidarity, knowing that each person is somewhere on their transformational journey, and that as a community, we get to knit our humanity together through the Spirit, so that somehow we know, not just hope, but we know that we don't journey alone. So I'm going to ask us to stand, and I'm going to ask our musicians to come up now, because I would like to invite you to come into this open space. If you are in a season, or you want to be in a season, or you know somebody who is in a season, and you need to pray for that person in their season, and that your prayer needs to be not let this season pass, but your prayer needs to be let this person walk through this season. Not do it alone, but to do it with a community. Maybe you know somebody, maybe you are experiencing a season of winter where you can't see your hand in front of your face, it's so dark. Maybe you need to know that Jesus is right there with you because he led you there, and he'll never leave you and he'll never forsake you. Maybe you're in a season where you've come to realize that Jesus Christ found you 2,000 years ago when you weren't even born. Maybe you're coming to this realization that the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the new life that comes from Jesus is exactly the same life that you can have right here, right now, if you would just wake up to it. And so if you are in that season, I'd like to invite you to come forward as Resonate sing this amazing song that says that wherever you are in life, your life is in His hands. Shall we all stand? Shall we all stand in solidarity together? We just stand here knowing, not hoping, but knowing that our whole lives are in your hands. No matter what season we're in, no matter where we're heading, no matter where we've been, our life is in your hands. And we thank you, we thank you, we thank you for that promise. Amen. Let's give God and each other a clap, shall we? Yeah. Every praise, every praise.